Hello homies, that is homies. Welcome to today's video. Today's video we're going to be talking about a sensitive subject. All kids please kick off now. Alright, now that the kiddos are gone, welcome adults. This is to describe your first trip. Now whether that be acid, mushrooms, I haven't done DMT so I can't speak on DMT, salvia, doesn't matter. This is your first trip. I'm going to be describing my first trip, which was acid, and what that felt like. So when you have your first trip, you want to have a friend nearby. Uh, every time I've tripped, I never had a trip sitter. We all tripped together, and it proved to be a better vibe for me than having a trip sitter. A lot of people prefer to have a trip sitter, but it's up to you. What is a trip sitter? A trip sitter is somebody who watches over you and your friends tripping who's completely sober. Now, I always did it without a trip sitter, but you're welcome to have a trip sitter. It's actually encouraged to have a trip sitter for any kind of trip that you're doing. If you're taking acid, make sure you only take one tab. If you're taking shrooms, make sure you take two stems and like 4 caps. That'll have you chilling. All right. If you're smoking salvia, smoke half a bowl. That'll have you chilling. You don't want to smoke a full bowl and torch it because you'll be tripping balls, and you don't want that. It's scary. Make sure to take drugs responsibly, and don't be scared. The more scared you are, the more scary the trip's going to be. The anxiety is what gets to people and changes their trip to be negative. What I always told people, I was known as the shroom guru in my friend group because everybody looked towards me as the guy. I was that guy, and that's my drug of choice is shrooms. So it makes sense that everybody looked to me as that guy. But when you take shrooms or you take any kind of substance that is a psychedelic, you want to be in a secure environment. A lot of people prefer to be outside. I don't recommend being outside because being outside, you're exposing yourself to other people and potentially being arrested. Nobody likes getting arrested, okay? Nobody wants to be arrested. That would suck. That would suck dick. You don't want to be arrested. So, we're going to focus on tripping inside. Tripping inside meaning focus on your favorite things to do, whether it be playing a video game, uh, hanging out with your friends, smoking weed. A lot of people say smoking weed helps them mediate the trip. For me, it enhances the trip, makes it more vivid and more flamboyant. That's not the word I'm looking for. More eccentric. There we go. It's more eccentric than tripping without it. Now, if you're a nickhead, a nicotine fiend like I am, resetting the trip is very much so a thing if you have nicotine on hand. So if you have a vape or you have cigarettes, make sure if the trip gets too bad, you go and smoke a cigarette or you hit your vape, and it'll mediate the trip at least for like 30 seconds. So you'll be able to regain your grounding and you'll be chilling for 30 seconds. Okay? These are things you need to know going into a trip, and drink plenty of water as well. Keep yourself hydrated and make sure you eat before your first trip. Or if you're ingesting mushrooms, make sure you eat with the mushrooms. So what we would do is we'd put mushrooms on pizza or in pasta. I'd put it in pho. Back in 228, I put it in pho, and I'd boil the mushrooms in the pho to make the psychedelic or the psilocybin go throughout the water or the broth. Now that we have these basics sat down and ready to go, let me talk to you about my first ever trip, which is on acid. So I was at Connor's place, and we were with Ian and Tav, and we all decided we were going to do acid instead of going to school. And I was like, all right, bet. Because it was my first time. I was like, I'm nervous, guys. I don't know what to say. And they're like, don't worry about it. You'll be cool. And I was like, okay. We take the tabs. There is two types of tabs. There's paper tabs, and then there's gel tabs. Gel tabs come in like a pyramid shape. Uh, Paper tabs come in like these paper squares that uh, have like a substance on it. I don't know how to describe it. They have a substance on it, and usually like an image on it. Kind of like you see in animated movies and shows. That's what a LSD tab looks like. Now, remember this, kids. or adults, excuse me, remember this. If it's a bitter, it's a spitter, okay? If it's bitter, if it tastes bitter, that's not real acid. That's some lace shit, okay? If it has no flavor whatsoever, you're good to go. That's acid. My first ever acid trip, it was a bitter one, all right? But it wasn't a bad trip. It wasn't a bad trip whatsoever. All I remember from my first trip was I went outside and the sky was purple. It wasn't blue, it was purple, and it was changing from green to purple. And then the trees were moving in like a circular pattern. So like they were warping in a circle in and out of each other. And everything was just super mellow and chill. We went back inside, we watched Naruto. You know the bridge scene? It goes on for like 2 or 3 episodes. Dude, it felt like an eternity. That episode was so dramatic and emotional on LSD. It was crazy. But fucking, we watched Naruto. We chilled for the rest of the day. I went home and I was still tripping. I think this was like 5 p.m. I went home. And when I got home, my parents were like, "Where were you at?" I was like, I hung around school for a little bit." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And so I went back to my bedroom. I played some video games, and I was chilling. And the trip lasts, if you didn't know, the LSD trips last about 10 hours. For me, they last 12 hours, which is crazy to think about. It depends on your metabolism, and it also depends on your body type. But mushrooms only last 4 to 6 hours. Salvia lasts 20 minutes. DMT can last like 20 minutes to 40 minutes. And are there any other psychedelics that I'm not thinking of? There's ayahuasca, but nobody really does ayahuasca. Uh, Now let's talk about mushrooms. Mushrooms is what I'm experienced in or most experienced in. I'm well versed in. I love mushrooms to death. That's like my homie right there. Um, when you do mushrooms, like I said, you want to eat it on pizza or eat it in pho, eat it in a soup. Boil the stems and caps, and you can make like a good coffee out of it. A lot of people don't think about that, but it washes out that mushroom taste, and you get the psilocybin. I also like to grind mushrooms and use them as a topping for like burgers and stuff. That's a good way to do it as well. And it gets rid of the icky feeling you have in your stomach when you first eat mushrooms, because you're ingesting food along with the mushrooms. If you eat the mushrooms by themselves, again, I have to stress this, you're going to throw up. I had a homie named Callie who wouldn't be able to ingest mushrooms. Every time she did mushrooms, she would throw up because her stomach just didn't agree with them. And that's why you got to ingest them with a food, because the food combines with the mushrooms, and then it's just, I can't explain the science of it. It just wants to ingest it. Your body needs it because it's food now. It's not just mushrooms with psilocybin. It doesn't want to reject it. Now that we got that out the way, what can you expect from your first shroom trip? Your first shroom trip, you're going to experience light visuals. It's going to be like, imagine your wood grain on your table or desk, the wood grain moving constantly to the right and in waves. It's going to be moving in to the right in waves. And then your body high is going to be very mellow. You're going to feel lighter, and you're going to feel more energetic. A lot of my friends described it, your first time tripping, you're going to act like a kid again. You're going to feel like you were younger. You're going to feel like you were, everything's childhood again. Like everything's magical. Rainbows, you know. Not actually seeing rainbows. This is not me glorifying drugs, YouTube. But this is me saying that essentially you revert to your previous self from when you were like 12. I mean, you giggle at everything. You can, not can, you will, you'll just feel lighter and you'll feel happier if you don't fight the shrooms. Now, what happens if you fight the mushrooms? If you fight the mushrooms, you're in for a tough time, buddy. You're in for a really tough time. What do I mean by fight the mushrooms? I mean, the high gets so bad for you, like you hate it so much that you don't want to vibe with it, and you try everything you want to do. So you smoke weed, you go outside, this, that, and the third, change your environment. This is too much for your body, your mind to adapt to, and then you'll get scared. It triggers that like scared thing in your brain. I don't know what it's called, but it triggers you. And once you get scared, you constantly spiral into this negative thought because thought loops exist. What are thought loops? Thought loops are basically you'll think something and you're very scatterbrained, so you'll think of something, it's a brilliant idea or it's a terrible idea, one or the other, or it's just something random, and then you'll have that thought, you'll move on to something else, and you'll be moving on to that something else for 30 minutes, and then that thought comes back, the original thought. And this happens throughout the entire trip. That original thought comes back over and over and over again. This is normal. It's completely normal for your trip. Okay, so don't get weirded out, and don't have your homies be weirded out when you have that thought loop, because just tell them, oh, it's a thought loop. That's, you're checking yourself. You're being your own trip sitter. This is why I don't like trip sitters, because you can always be your own trip sitter while you're tripping, especially if you're well versed enough. But if it's your first time, I highly recommend having a trip sitter, and you're scared of mushrooms, I highly recommend having a trip sitter. But without, what you can expect is to have a good time. My first time without was playing Destiny 2. I went to the Dreaming City, and I remember looking around the Dreaming City, and everything was moving in waves. Like, everything was so beautiful. Colors were popping. When I rode my sparrow, there was another shadow sparrow in front of me, and I'd follow the shadow sparrow, and I didn't know where I was going. So the shadow sparrow took me throughout the Dreaming City, and I eventually ended up in that well where it was like a public event. The hive scared the shit out of me because they looked creepy, and I just ended up fighting a bunch of mobs, a bunch of ads, and I explored. I also played a Crucible match, and Crucible, oh my god, Crucible was an experience. To be able to use Galrun's right hand man, or not Galrun's, it was something else. I used something else. I can't remember. I used some kind of auto rifle, and I was just floating around. All my teammates were shadows, and everything was coming in waves, like to the right. That's how it works. Is it flows to the right? It doesn't flow to the left. Sometimes it'll be in like an actual wave motion, so it'll flow to the right, then flow to the left, in and out of each other, kind of lapping over each other. But most of the time, it just flows to the right in a wave like aspect. I'll see if I can find a gif of it. Probably not, like usual. Um, but it's super cool. I highly recommend playing games on shrooms. I also I watched Has Been Hotel, the pilot, on shrooms, and that was an experience too. I It felt like I was talking to the characters, and now that I think about it, that was the start of my psychosis, which is next video. It's talking about my psychosis, and just getting to know the characters better was really cool, and understanding like how they interact with each other was really cool. You really analyze things a little too much when you're on shrooms, which is kind of cool, or at least I do. I overanalyze things on shrooms. Like, one time I listened to MF Doom's Food album, and the entire time I was like, yo, this is crazy. Going over every bar that MF Doom was spitting would just, it felt surreal. It felt like I was in the studio with him, like, analyzing his bars, telling him, okay, you need to write this about, like, about chicken parmesan. You need to write. I felt like I was in there cooking with him, and it was crazy. It was a once in a lifetime experience, and that's the beauty of psychedelics. Is everything you enjoyed can be better, especially if you've lost interest. This is why it's also dangerous for people who get addictions. Like my homie Cam, he now has an addiction to shrooms because, or at least last time that I talked to him, he was taking shrooms every day. Uh, because it just makes you feel that much better. And I mean, to each their own, but it can get you arrested. You know, it's not legal yet. In Oregon, it's decriminalized, but still, in most states, all states really, you can get arrested for that, for possession or being on the drug. So I highly recommend taking them in your home and not going outside. If you go outside, you're looking at a maybe rough time. I've been outside once or twice on shrooms, and when I was outside, everything flowed together. The trees were beautiful. Colors aren't really accentuated, uh, aren't aren't louder than usual. You know, brighter. But everything feels more lively. Everything feels alive. I've yet to see wildlife, so like, you know, a deer or something. I really want to see a deer and like what that would be like under the influence of shrooms, or to see like a rabbit or something, a jackrabbit. That would be so cool. It would be a once in a lifetime experience. My homies Ian and Tav, and then yeah, I know this sounds racist, but his name is Ling Ling. Okay, he was the plug. He was one of our plugs. They all went to Nike headquarters in Beaverton at midnight, and they hopped the fence. Shout out to them. They hopped the fence and explored the Nike headquarters under the influence of acid, and they said that was a once in a lifetime experience. I didn't go. I just chilled with Connor in the darkness, and that was cool too. But this is basically what you can expect from your first couple trips. It's a good old time. Now salvia, I'm gonna get into salvia because this is a weird one. My first time doing salvia, I was with Jordan. These are names you don't know. I don't know why I'm saying them. I was with my homie Jordan, and he was crackhead. He did meth, and he was like, "Yo, bro, we're gonna get salvia, bro, and you need to smoke a whole bowl. You need to torch the whole bowl." And I'm like, "All right," because I didn't know what to do. Connor didn't know what to do either. Neither of us knew what we were doing. So it was like, you need to torch the whole bowl, bro, and you need to hold it for 15 seconds. What a fucking crackhead. That's not how you smoke salvia, okay? So I listen to him. We sit in the bathroom. I'm sitting on the toilet. Connor's like, nah, bro, I'm chilling. I'm not trying to smoke salvia. And I was like, okay, I bet I am. Aiden was there as well, playing Fortnite. Sit on the toilet. He's smoking weed in the corner. He's looking at me, and he's like, go ahead, bro. I take the pipe up to my mouth, and I light it. I light it with my left hand. I'm left-handed, by the way. Smoke the whole bowl, hold it for 15 seconds, and then I release, and there's no smoke. No smoke whatsoever. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Instantly, my vision goes outward. Like, accentuates outward, or like fucking projects outward, and I'm like, oh no, this isn't good. I stand up and I feel like falling immediately. Like, I'm so lightheaded that I just feel like falling. I turn to the left. Jordan's laughing at me, and I'm like, ah, shit. I open the door to the bathroom, right, and I walk out the doorway, and I turn around and I'm back on the toilet. I shit you not, I'm back on the toilet. And then this happens 3 more times, but the third time I open the door, and the wood grain of the door is Jordan's face laughing at me. Like, the entire wood grain is just melting, and it's his face laughing at me. It was scary as shit. But I finally got to leave, and I was in the hallway now, and I go to the bedroom, and I look at Aiden, and I'm like, dude, I'm tripping balls. And Aiden's like, nah, bro, you're chilling. I'm like, all right, bet. And so I go and lay on Connor's bed, face down. And all I remember from laying face down on his bed is I closed my eyes and I saw stars. I literally saw space itself and like my body in a third person point of view, and I was floating through space, and I could kind of like move my arms. I wasn't moving them in reality, but like in third person I could see myself moving my arms, like using my energy or some shit. And when I'd move my arms, I would move forward and move backwards. It felt like astral projection, really. So I kept moving my arms and exploring. I never went to any planets. There was just stars everywhere, and it was black, pitch black. And eventually I woke up from this weird trip that I was in, and I got up off the bed, and I went to sat in the chair that was in Connor's room, and I was like, holy shit, that is the worst trip I have ever had in my life. By the way, when you smoke salvia for the first time, you're going to hear a loud ringing in your ear. Things are going to be like faster. They're going to feel a lot faster. Your heart rate starts pumping faster. It's really just not a good drug. I compare it to a caffeine overdose all the time, because that's what it feels like. It feels like a caffeine overdose. Anyway, that's what salvia feels like. That's what mushrooms feels like, and that's what acid feels like. Now, as for DMT, I've never done DMT, but I've done my research. You apparently go to like this space that's alien or foreign. You have to take 3 hits to reach the ultimate high on DMT. And when you take 3 hits, you're brought to this space where you meet like aliens and shit, and you meet these beings who are really happy to see you apparently. And like again, you have to take my word for it, but do your research on DMT because I've never done it. They're happy to see you. They say plenty of things about you. One dude talked about how he worked a whole night shift at this grocery store. At a grocery store, like an intergalactic grocery store, which is kind of crazy. And that's basically psychedelics and what you can expect from your first trip from each of these. Do I recommend taking these drugs? No, absolutely not. If you're sober and you want to remain sober, stay sober. But this is my story time, and I felt like sharing my story with y'all. And I felt like just explaining what the high feels like. Excuse me, my monitor turned off. I just highly recommend it. Anyway, have a great rest of your day, homies. That is, homies. Thank you for watching my video. Take care, alright, and take drugs responsibly. Don't take them. Don't take them just for fun. Take them responsibly. Have a great rest of your day. Zajja.